All right, I'm going to call the March 6th, what day? March 6th, 2018 zoning board of appeals meeting to order. My name is Jim Went. I'm the chairman. I'll let the other members present identify themselves for the recorded record.
I'm Andrew Monroe.
Dominic Leach, a member.
Marion Callow, member.
Augusta Panic. We'll have the secretary read the notice of public hearing. You have that available? Okay.
Zoning Board of Appeals, Monroe, Connecticut, notice of public hearing to be held on March 6, 2018. In accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, Section 8-7D, the Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 7 Fanhill Road, Monroe, Connecticut, on Tuesday, March 6, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. or soon thereafter, concerning the following: ZBA-2018-015, file number 1396, RF-1 District, 96 Barn Hill Road, Assessors Map 77, Lot 66, and 112 Barn Hill Road, Assessors Map 78, Lot 5. Application of Lisa Payne and Eileen and Dana McKinder, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, for an area variance of 3.1.5A to permit a minimum square with a dimension of 129.4 feet square in lieu of 135 feet square, and an area variance of 3.1.8 to permit 17.9% site coverage in lieu of the 15% maximum. The area variances are intended to support a subsequent application to the Planning and Zoning Commission for re-subdivision of the property into 2 separate building lots. Eileen and Dana McIndoe, 112 Barn Hill Road, and Lisa Payne, 96 Barn Hill Road. Complete details and copies of all related materials associated with the above matter is on file and available for viewing in the Monroe Planning and Zoning Department office.
Thank you. So we will start with the only matter we have on our public hearing agenda. Is there someone here? Before we get too far into this, I'm sure you can see there's only 4 of us present this evening.
Correct.
As I'm sure you are aware, that would require us to render a unanimous verdict in order to approve an application. So it is your choice to proceed this evening with the 4 of us or hold this over till we have a 5th member present. So that is up to you as to how you want to proceed at this point.
Okay. I certainly would like to open, if I could just have a moment to check with my client.
Certainly.
Sure.
Get it to speed. Take it, watch it, or take this with the cells. Okay.
Chairman Wendt, what I'd like to do, with your permission, is I'd like to make my initial presentation, and if we could keep the hearing open until next month, so that way if there are
Yeah, that's
other
fine. I was just
commission
discussing
members.
that with, well, we can certainly proceed with your presentation and our questions, and if we're not going to be unanimously in support of the application, then we can hold it open for a fifth member to get up to speed and then
Okay.
become part of the
Perfect.
deliberation.
And I just wanted to give Mr. Grester, we got a few more of the green cards, so I just wanted to hand those in.
Thank you.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amy Suchins. I'm an attorney at Hurwitz, Sager, Salzburg, and Nuff with offices in Milford. Here with me tonight is Tracy Lewis, who is our surveyor, and Lisa Payne, who is the owner of 96 Barn Hill Road, and the applicant before you tonight. The application is filed on behalf of Mrs. Payne, but with the consent of, and also on behalf of Eileen and Dana McIndoe, who are the owners of 112 Barn Hill Road. As outlined, I just want to take you a little bit through the background to explain how we got here and the reasons for the application. The property is located in the RF1 zone. The property legally is comprised of the single parcel that includes both 96 and 112 Barn Hill. It was initially about 40 or so years ago, 20 acres. The two homes at 96 and 112 Barn Hill both date back to the turn of the previous century, approximately 1900 or a little earlier based on our research. Both properties contain some barns, garage outbuildings, and other associated accessory structures. Ultimately, we're here because what happened in 1972 was the initial subdivision of what is now known as the Payne property. Two of the lots were separated with a subdivision approval, and a remaining piece identified as Lot 3 was the larger piece. That's contained as Exhibit B in my original application narrative. And that was, as I said, approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission in 1972. Several years later, also included as Exhibit C in the application narrative, Lot 3 from the Shelton map was further subdivided on a map prepared for Bopco, I believe is how it's pronounced. And on that map, what you'll see is the line, there's a line that appears to be a meets and bounds description, but is consistent with where everybody has believed the McIndoe property line to be located. It's just less than an acre in total, but as part of this application and hopefully an eventual subdivision, Mrs. Payne is prepared to convey the additional property to make the McIndoe lot a conforming 1 acre lot. After the 1975 subdivision, there was a subsequent 1985 5-lot re-subdivision that was known as Meadowview Acres. What was Lot 3 becomes Lot 5 on that map, and that Lot 5 is now the property in question, 96 and 112 Barn Hill Road. The Shelton family, which is Lisa Payne's family, continued to own that property for several more years. There were some internal conveyances between the family members and a trust. The property, known now as 112 Barn Hill Road, was identified as a separate assessor's parcel in the land records. Based on what I could find, that goes back to at least 19, it's on the assessor card. The original conveyance there was in 1992. That it goes back at least that far, that there's a separate, as far as I can tell, a separate assessor's record for that information. Excuse me, for that lot. In May of 1999, the Shelton Family Trust and Lisa Payne as the trustee conveyed the property to Eileen McIndoe, who subsequently conveyed it to her and to Dana a couple of years later, and has remained in that ownership since then. So for the last 19 years, the McIndoes have resided at 112 Barn Hill, thinking that they were on their own separately legally subdivided piece of property. And everyone was in that transaction represented by counsel. The McIndoes got a mortgage on the property, recorded on the Monroe land records. Everything related to those transactions identifies the property as 112 Barn Hill Road. So both, I think all of the council involved, all of the property owners involved, and I think there were even indications on the town's part with the assessor's records in a separate card that this was a independent parcel. The McIndoes came in to the town in the last couple of years to do some improvements on their property and discovered as a result of trying to obtain those permits that the property had not in fact been legally subdivided from the larger Lot 5 at 96 Barn Hill. So from a legal and zoning perspective right now, the Lot 5, which comprises both 96 Barn Hill and 112 Barn Hill, are a single parcel. In order for us to move forward with the subdivision in accordance with what the McIndoes thought they owned, some additional land that will be conveyed by Lisa Payne to make the 1 acre minimum, we do need and have requested 2 variances. The first, which I think is fairly straightforward, is a fairly modest request for a 129.4 foot square, where 135 foot square is required. There is I just wanted to call out, there's a minor discrepancy in the staff report where it says that the square required is 150 feet. It's actually just 135 in the RF1. And then the purpose for the square requirement in the subdivision regulations is to make sure that you don't have sort of tortured lot shapes. You have uniformity in subdivisions to make sure that they are consistent size and shape. And I don't think we have anything, that kind of issue here. We're simply trying to make the property as closely conforming as possible, and we're just a wee bit short on the distance because of the shape of the McIndoe lot. Thank you. So what you have on Mr. Lewis's plan depicted in the red square is the size of the square that we can accommodate, the 129.4 square feet. Thanks, Tracy. And then the minimum square is what's depicted in blue, just for your reference, because of the shape of and the street location of Barn Hill and the property, we can never get to the full width of 135 feet. So we just depicted that for you there. The hatched area along the right is that additional land that will be conveyed to the McIndoes eventually if the variances in subdivision are granted to make the overall property conforming to the 1 acre minimum. And then the second requested variance is for maximum coverage, which is for 17.9%, where 12% is allowed. What has happened since the McIndoes purchased the property in May of 1999, all of the structures that you see, the house, the shed, the patio, garage, were in existence at the time the property was conveyed. According to the assessor's card, the pool was installed in approximately 2004. At that point, the zoning regulations allowed coverage of up to 15%, except for the fact that driveways were excluded, whereas now the current regulation, and I actually included, just wanted to highlight for you, the exhibit. Exhibit F was the prior zoning regulation that allowed the aggregate coverage of all buildings and other structures on any lot not to exceed 15% of the area of the lot. When the regulations were amended in 2013, as to their current version, it includes driveways and other impervious areas not to exceed 15% of the area of the lot. And so what we're asking for is that minor change to allow 17.9% coverage, which is consistent with what's depicted on the property now and what has been there for the last 14 years and before this regulation came into effect. I think I have a slight disagreement with the town planner who, in his staff report, focused on the hardship standard. I don't think that that's the basis on which we're here today. The property as it currently stands is non-conforming in the zoning regulations because it has 2 single-family houses and accessory structures for both on a single lot. An alternate standard for granting a variance in Connecticut is for the reduction of nonconformities. By granting these 2 variances, what you'll enable us to do is reduce that nonconformity, create 2 lots consistent with not only the party's intention, but also with the RF1 zone to have a single-family house on a single lot. Is, as you can see from the surrounding neighborhood, and I can happy to provide a copy of the assessor's map, these lots are consistent and the houses on them are consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. And I don't think there's any issue that there would be any sort of undermining of the zoning scheme or comprehensive plan if these two variances were granted consistent with that concept of reducing the nonconformities. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, particularly about any of the history or the nature of the variances. But
Yeah, the property line where they own their property now, how was that established? Now, we went through so many things that it gets confusing as to what happened when.
Absolutely.
That wasn't done by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Correct, which is why we're here. It's from what we've been able to tell, it looks like that line appears to have been the result of, it's shown as Exhibit C in our application narrative. It's a re-subdivision of Lot 3 for George Botco. And Lot 3 is what's now known as the larger Payne property. If you look on that map, there's a line that's depicted on the map filed on the land records that shows what I think everybody thought was a boundary, frankly, at that point. And that's where on Tracy's drawing it's labeled former deed line, is consistent with where that line is on the Botco map and consistent with what is in the property descriptions conveying 112 Barn Hill.
There's a line, but there's no division. I mean, if you look at the property, it's a single parcel.
Correct. And I'm not trying to be confusing. There's a line shown. It's not identified as a separate lot, but I think that's where the confusion came from, because it seems like everything that we were able to find after this map, that seems to be the source of the confusion.
I've got a couple questions with respect to the lot coverage.
Sure.
Calculation. In looking at the Bobco map, I'm less concerned about the lot square issue, because I think I agree with you that in looking at the lots that front, lots 1, 2, 4, and 5 on that Bobco map are fairly consistently sized. But by my math, is 17.9% is the lot coverage?
17.9, including the driveway and all of the structures on the property.
And that's with the additional land to be conveyed, is that correct?
That is with the additional land to be conveyed.
So that's just under 7,800 square feet. Does that include the gravel driveway?
That includes the gravel driveway, yes.
Would the gravel, as my reading of that, I mean, would that, does gravel,
Yeah.
is that considered impervious under
We're
that
counting,
definition?
yes. Because even under drainage analysis, we would treat that as pavement as well.
If you were to exclude that, and that was actually one of the conversations we had with Mr. Agresta before we filed the application, because we weren't sure that the gravel driveway was included, I believe we were under the 15% if you excluded the gravel driveway.
But conversely, the adjacent piece that's conveying that strip is over 10 acres in size. By my math, you'd need a little over 8,400 more square feet to get to 15%, to accomplish the lot coverage issue. Is there any consideration given to a combination of perhaps a combination of a larger conveyance and perhaps a reduction in some of the existing coverage to try to avoid the need for the coverage variance?
Reducing the existing coverage was not something the McIndoes were willing to do, as far as I understood at this juncture. We explored the idea of additional conveyance. What we're trying to be sensitive to is the location of the pond, and by moving the property line and providing additional land in that area, we obviously then put the property line in the middle of the pond. We have to be sensitive to the Payne's garage, because we don't want to move the property line and create a different nonconformity with, the property, that garage becoming nonconforming because it's too close to the property line. And then with those two constraints, adding additional land then makes the McIndoe piece almost have a tail, for lack of a better description, because we'd have to then move up and around the pond. So it was very much a practical consideration of trying to keep what we were asking for consistent with what's actually on the property, consistent with the zoning regulations, and not create sort of a very oddly shaped lot, inconsistent, frankly, with what else is around it.
But just to go back a step, if you excluded the driveway from the lot coverage calculations, you would not exceed 15%. Is that what I understood you to say?
Let me have Tracy.
Yes.
That's correct? Yeah.
Okay.
Has any thought been given to approaching Doris David on perhaps, if I don't know how much area is in that little blue sliver there, of being able to purchase some land from her? She's got over an acre, doesn't she?
According to the map, she is at, the map that has the line, that lot is 1.009
Okay,
acres.
not enough.
So I don't think
No,
it's,
no.
Well,
We
there is a way to
create a
mathematically
different-
do that, but that's adding another layer and another person.
correct. And frankly, I'm
It's a good
also
swap.
not sure if the width, according to the maps that I have that are part of the record, the property, her rear property line on the right here is only 110 feet. So arguably taking any of it would make that lot more non-conforming. So we're
Okay.
sorry, I'd be trading one non-conformity for a different request to you.
And can I back up to some of your earlier testimony where you compared the previous definition for lot coverage and the present? When did that change happen? Was that 2013?
February of 2013.
And that was after all the current improvements
Yes,
were
the
there on that?
last thing that was installed was the pool, and that was 2004 per the assessor's records.
Do you have a calculation of what the lot coverage would be under the 2013 definition?
I think it would just exclude the driveway. So we're back to the
We're
same
back to the
question
same
we had.
question we had.
Yeah.
When you found this out when you went to the town because you wanted to make some improvements to the property,
The McIndoes did, yes.
if this is granted, are you gonna have to come back to us again to expand something? Because it looks like you really don't have, you're right, you'd be right at the border of not being able to expand.
No, that lot would be done, yeah.
Huh?
That lot would,
Right.
unless they would trade, they'd have to trade things out. they can net out the square footage. Like, for instance, if they wanted to add on to the house or something, and they took away a shed or the barn, they could
They'd
net it
have
out.
to take away a
They'd
shed
have-
or barn, yeah,
they-
okay.
They can net it out. They
Right.
couldn't exceed.
Right, my understanding is that the McIndoes, from the McIndoes lawyer, is that they have plans to renovate the house, and that was part of why they came in looking for a permit, and that's when they discovered the illegal subdivision. And then I think beyond that, if you granted the variances, they would need to work within whatever constraints that might present.
And the 17.9% lot coverage is predicated on that storage container being removed, is that?
Yes, that is there, my understanding is that was there, and brought in for additional storage related to what, the work they wanted to do on the house, and it contains some building materials, so
That's a
That
will be-
that's a non-authorized structure.
What is that? Is
Correct.
it 17.9% with the storage container or?
Without.
or with it being
Without.
removed?
Yeah, the
Correct.
storage container shouldn't be there. One, it's in the setback. Two, it's
Okay.
not permitted and it's not allowed use,
correct.
except for during permit construction.
So it's part of this application for that to be removed?
That's correct.
Anybody else have any questions?
I looked at this before I came here tonight, and several ways. And in view of your explanation and presentation, I agree that there's no other way but what you proposed here to go ahead.
Okay. Nothing else? You have anything further?
I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here that's a member of the public that wishes to be heard on this matter? Nobody? Okay, Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the earlier question, is that what you want to do? Because if you close, no one can
You
enter
don't want
in.
to close it, you want to just.
Oh, well,
Can we recess and take a poll?
No.
do we, need- I'm getting this, I think we're safe at closing the public hearing.
Okay.
That's all up to you and them.
Right. I mean, if we're inclined to find in favor, then we might as well just get out of it. If we're not, if somebody's on the fence, then tell me we should keep the public hearing.
I don't find any reason to deny.
Right. Okay. I think we're safe at closing the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So I'm going to go out of order a little bit on this agenda since we're here and we've just closed this public hearing to talk about it. I personally, when I reviewed the materials, perhaps similar to Dominic, I had no issue with the lot square. I was questioning why couldn't they make up the lot coverage, but because it's such a 10-acre piece. But given the fact that all those improvements were there and the regulation was changed in 2013, I think is a mitigating factor for me, that they now retroactively have to count that driveway, which they didn't have to do before, so.
I'm amazed that a gravel driveway would be considered impervious. I mean, it drains through.
It's
Well-
not about impervious, and it actually doesn't drain through when it gets compacted. It generally serves the same as a pavement surface
Mhm.
does. But it's not about that. It's really about the conversion of all the green space. It's not just about drainage.
So, given that, the change in the regulation, I think, is a mitigating factor for me. Yeah, could they expand that, but it would be an off-wood property line, so I'm okay supporting this application myself.
I also feel that the people did have legal counsel when they bought the land and everything.
Right.
And it's not their fault.
They're making it better. I agree. I'm glad to see that at least they're doing conveyance to meet the minimum acreage, so at least they're really attempting to make it less non-conforming than it is. So I think there's something to be said for that, too.
I agree. I think that attempting to go through every legal way to remedy the situation So, I would be in
Yeah.
favor.
So we would need, is that a motion to approve,
I'll
Mr.
make a
Panuccio?
motion to approve.
All right.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion to approve and seconded. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
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 Those opposed? It is approved 4-0. Very good. I appreciated the historical backdrop in this presentation.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as well. So the only thing we have left, I believe, are the minutes, right? I'm all over the place with my paperwork there. There were only 3 of us here for that, which is okay. That's, we can vote with 3 on the minutes. Did you guys have an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from January? Anybody?
Want to make a motion?
No.
Move to approve the minutes?
All right.
Second.
Move and second. All those in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, they're approved 3-0. Okay. And that's, we'll do it. We don't have 5 regular members present to vote on officers, and we do have a matter for next time, so we're trying to save a little postage by giving us that plan now. Anything we need to know about that particular?
Yeah, it's kind of unique. It's a property that is, I wouldn't say it's landlocked. It abutted a paper road that was discontinued by the town several years ago. Obviously, the land reverted to the adjacent property owners. That gave them 50 feet of frontage on the end of Robin Lane, I think it is. They were pursuing in front of the Inland Wetlands Commission a 3-lot subdivision extending Robin Lane with a cul-de-sac into the property. There's quite a bit of wetlands, quite a bit of upland review area. The Wetlands Commission wasn't very enamored with the proposal since it also involved a common driveway for 2 of the lots, because one of the lots, the only way to get to it otherwise would have been through a long swath of wetlands.
So you're just proposing one house, then?
Yeah, so, well, the commission was then toying, I mean, the Inland Wetlands was having a hard time granting them approval. They may have gotten down to maybe 2, maybe denying it outright. The applicant saw the writing on that wall and thought, okay, I'm gonna step back and not pursue the subdivision. I have to pursue a variance in order to even build 1 lot.
Is it the frontage?
So, that is what they are coming for.
How much frontage do they have?
They have
50
just the 50 feet at the end of Robin Lane, which is a cul-de-sac that ends at the property. So, and if, you know, obviously, to get more frontage, they could do that by building a road, but economically, unless you're getting lots, building a road negates
It's a 12.5-acre piece.
doing, yeah, well, they can't get much, because.
Yeah.
Well, this is the same situation we had on Cutlass Run Road with the Annecy property.
A little different, and this is probably didn't necessarily have the, as much of the natural site constraints that were really impairing development,
Okay.
whereas this has quite a considerable amount of wetlands on it. And it was, you know, really squeezing 3 houses, even the 1 house is kind of not the greatest house lot.
It's a long driveway. Weather like tomorrow, we wouldn't want a driveway like that.
That's if the weather people are right.
Yeah, well, you never know. Yeah, we're getting something. It's just a matter of how much. All right, we're good then. Thank you all for being here. You gonna reach out to Mr. Sirocco and
Yeah,
see
see if I can
what's up?
find out.
I haven't seen him for a while.